Hey guys, it's Miss Avela. I've gotten a couple of emails asking questions about how to do the inferencing worksheet. So that tells me that I didn't do a good job explaining it in class. So I made this video so that hopefully it will help you. Also, please excuse the mess in the background. I just moved and we are doing some reconstruction. So hopefully in the future videos you will see a much improved version of my workspace. Okay, so when we did this in class on this particular slide, we looked at all of the containers and then we filled out nope, not that handout. Number 8. Come on, Spela. Okay, this one. So if you can see, we wrote jar, egg carton, pitcher, recycle bin. Okay, all of that stuff. So it was jar, egg carton, pitcher, recycle bin. Okay, so that's the first part. You're literally telling us what it is. So a big beaker or a mixing cup, trunk, shopping bags, etc. So you're literally writing down what they are on that worksheet. Okay. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to infer what you can tell about that person. So for me, for the jar, I put that it was probably somebody who works on a farm and creates their own jams and preserves and puts them in their own jars because that's what I associate. That's what it makes me think of. The egg carton, some people put down like a baker, some people put down a farmer. So there's a lot of different things you can put there. It's basically what that object implies and what you infer from that implication. So, like I said in class, that if I have a ring can be both a wedding ring or a graduation ring or a high school class ring or a confirmation ring. But the way it looks is going to imply what it is, and you will infer that information. So if I have a ring on this finger, because I'm giving you an indicator, this tells you that I'm engaged or I'm married. So the ring itself is literally the same, regardless of what kind of ring it is, and regardless of who's wearing it, right? A ring is a ring is a ring. But there's more to it than that. There's actually some implications depending on who's wearing it, what it looks like, etc. Okay, so the implication is all that other stuff, and then we interpret it, and our interpretation is the inference. So that's how you fill out this worksheet. Okay, so then it applies to this other worksheet here. Okay, so when you're looking at it, what you're going to do, just in this top section right here, is you're just looking at the container of inferencing number 1. So if you're looking at the PowerPoint, there's 3 inferencing exercises that you do. And it says inference 1, inference 2, and inference 3. Sorry, that's my dog playing. Okay, so for instance, on the inferencing work that we have here, right? Okay, we're going to look at inferencing number 1. Okay, so this says inference number 1. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the first picture. Okay, so what is this? Literally, it's a fishbowl. So that's what we're going to put. We're going to put here is fishbowl. Okay, so what do you assume about that fishbowl? So if we look at the fishbowl, we can assume a couple of things, right? It's a circular bowl. It's smallish. It's got all this stuff in the bottom. It's got water in it. It's got these little bubbles. So there are a lot of things that when we look at it, it implies, so we can infer. So what are some things we can infer? We can infer that it's full, first of all. So that tells us a couple of things, either figuratively or literally, but it tells us that there has been probably a fish in it recently, or there's one going to be in it, right? Okay, so the bubbles tell us that it's water that's clean or currently has been put in there, because usually water and the bubbles don't, there's no bubbles if it's been sitting there for a while, unless it's got one of those percolator things, and this doesn't have that. So it also shows you that there's, the anchor and all that other stuff on the bottom. So it's probably a bowl that has a fish coming to it, and somebody's in anticipation of it. So that's everything that it implies and the things we can infer. So the implication is that there is water in it, all that other stuff. The implication is what the object is telling you. And then the inference is what we interpret that as. So the thing is that an implication will probably be the same because the information will be the same, but our inferencing will be different because when we infer something, we're bringing something to that inference. We're bringing our perception, we're bringing our history, we're bringing what we know. So the inference might be something different for you. So for instance, this might be inferencing for you. Someone said they got very metaphorical about it, which I thought was really cool. They said it's somebody who's full of life because they're welcoming and it's an aquarium that is accepting of fish. Well, that's great. That's a perfect inference. Doesn't necessarily mean it's right, but that's what we can infer. That's basically like a prejudgment. Inferencing and prejudgments are basically the same thing, just a fancier Englishy way to say it. So that's what you're going to put here is you'll put fishbowl, what you can assume about it, and then you just take that information. So I would put expecting a fish. And what does the object imply? So the object implies that it's expecting a fish because of all those things I told you. Okay. So then in the container, there are 8 things. Okay. So the first thing we have in the container, if I put it in presentation mode, might be a little bit easier to do. Okay, so the first thing we see are these notes, right? Okay, so we're going to put in that box, the column, there's a number 1, we're going to put notes, okay? Then in the next column, it says that we need to write down what it, I think it's what it applies or what it implies. Let me go back. There we go. All right, so then the worksheet says what the object implies. So that first thing, the note implies that it's somebody who writes, it's somebody who works a lot, it's somebody who uses Post-its, it's someone who takes notes a lot. I already said that, or something along those lines. So you're going to put that in this box right next to 1 because it's the first object. So here you would write notes. Here you would put it implies somebody who writes a lot. And then what can you infer about this person? So if it's a person who writes a lot or takes a lot of notes, who is that to you? Well, for me, it might be a secretary. For me, someone said it looked like receipts. So it might be somebody in a restaurant. So it all depends on how you interpret it. Okay. So if we look at the next object, which I believe if we were presenting this would actually be this notebook. Okay. So what you would put is you would put number 2, pink notebook. Okay. And what do you assume about it? Well, it's pink, so you might assume it's a girl. It's a pencil, so it's somebody who makes a lot of mistakes, someone who keeps notes, someone who studies. Any of those things are implied by the fact that it's a notebook, right? Okay, then we've got perception. So what can you or how do you interpret that notebook with that particular pencil? Well, me, I would think of, a girl who's younger, probably in high school, makes mistakes. That's why they have the eraser to correct things. So that's what I would put here. So then you're going to go through all of the objects till you end up with the 8th one, which is this one, just keep swimming. Okay. And that one, it probably at that point you already figured out who it was, but you would put just keep swimming poster. What does it infer? It infers it's somebody who likes whales or somebody who likes Finding Nemo or somebody who believes in just keep going no matter what happens. Okay, so your perception is what do you think a person who has that is? Well, a person who might have that is a motivational speaker, let's say. Okay, so that's what you're doing. You do that for each one of those. Okay, so if I was presenting this and this one was over, we finished this one. Let's go through all of them. Okay, so the next one is first is the container. So in that first thing, you're going to put toy box. Then in the next column, you're going to put down what it implies. It implies that there are toys, right? Because it's got toys on it. And it also implies that it's childlike or it's something from childhood. So what can you infer about that? You can infer that people play with toys, or it's a child, or someone doesn't have them put their toys away, etc. Okay. Then in the column below that, it's asking you for the 8 objects. Next to 1, you're going to put rocket ship, right? And then you're going to write down what it implies. Okay, so it's kind of a clip art. It's kind of cartoonish. So then what that implies? Well, it implies it's childlike, right? It's not a real rocket ship, so it's probably not like a model that someone has created. That's a NASA model or something. Because you'll go through all the objects and you'll try to figure out what it is. Okay, so that's what you're doing with that worksheet. So when you're done with this worksheet, you should have it filled out with what the object literally is, then what it implies. So, like that rocket ship implies that it's childlike because it's kind of a clip art cartoon looking, the colors are bright, it's not very realistic looking. And what can you infer from that? Well, that's probably a child's. Okay, so that's what you're doing through all of these. There are 8 objects in each container. So number 1 is the first object, 2 is the second object, 3 is the third object, etc. Okay, and there are 3 inferencing exercises. So that's what you're doing. I hope that helps. If you need more information, just email me or text me, and I will do my best to help explain. Okay, so good luck, and I will see you tomorrow.